Coviphobia is the irrational fear of COVID. Common symptoms generally include the absolute adherence to and endorsement of any and all COVID regulations, as well as the extreme and utter hatred of the non-coviphobic. So thankfully, you and I, we are not coviphobic. We do not suffer from this disease. You and I, we are Paul Revere. Obsession with coviphobia has overridden concern for any other type of death, disease, damage, oppression. So what our culture has done has been to say, yes, we realize people are killing themselves. Yes, people are losing their businesses and livelihoods and their minds. Yes, they're dying of other diseases as a direct result that the shutdown regulations have had on the medical industry, on medical services. Yes, people are depressed. Yes, children are starving to death. But what's more important is that we all pay very, very, very close attention to COVID. And yeah, it has a 99% recovery rate. Yeah, there's no evidence that masks really do anything for asymptomatic source control. But, and yes, we've always lived by a much different social contract, but none of that matters. And if you ask them why, as far as I can tell, the only answer is that they would say is this is our moral law. We created it. It's infallible. Our experts and scientists support it. And there can be no transgression nor a word of opposition to our law. And if you oppose us, you want people to die. Never mind the fact that people are dying as a direct result of our moral law. The deaths of COVID are more important than all those other deaths. So all deaths are not equal. All suffering is not equal. COVID death and suffering is the epitome of death and suffering. And even though our strategies don't really seem to be working, masks, social distancing, shutting everything down, etc., you must bow to us, whether you agree with us or not. And you know what? If you don't agree with us, you deserve to die. So one of the hardest things to do is to admit when we're wrong. I have been dramatically wrong many times in my life. And I know the pain of admitting it. To admit that you've done something wrong, that you've created pain, that you are imperfect, it hurts. But when we do admit our errors, we have a real opportunity to grow and fix major problems. So right now, people are dug in because to admit that they're wrong is to admit that they're somehow culpable for all that aforementioned pain, the suicides, the destruction of lives and businesses. But what they don't realize is that hindsight is 20/20. So when COVID started, we didn't know what it was, and we didn't really know what to do. We tried something that should have lasted maybe 2 to 8 weeks. Most people were on board. There was definitely grumbling and opposition and skepticism. But for the most part, people said, hey, this does look like it could be bad. So let's try to do something about it, which was a good thing. But those who objectively looked at the numbers after the shutdowns started, they were starting to see that perhaps the shutdowns weren't really doing anything, and that the damage being caused by the shutdowns and regulations, that was equal to or greater than perhaps the death and suffering resulting from COVID. So, Americans were depressed. We've gone over this. They're committing suicide, getting divorced. But the coviphobic demigods, these self-appointed experts and arbiters of truth and morality, they were dug into this new way of life. And I can't really explain why, other than perhaps because Trump wanted the world to get back in order. And anything that Trump says just has to be horrifically wrong. So he doesn't want to wear a mask. So they say you have to wear a mask. He wants things to start opening up. They say things shouldn't open up. But at any rate, their options were pretty much to admit that they were wrong, or to dig in. And so obviously they've chosen to dig in. So despite the lack of evidence that shutdowns are helping anything at all, and despite the very clear evidence that shutdowns and regulations are clearly hurting people, they've just decided to stick with the way they view things. All suffering and victims of their fear be damned. So this doesn't mean, though, that these same people can't apologize now. There's a ton of respect and humility in admitting when we're wrong. And so I just want to urge the coviphobic to step forward in humility, admit this whole COVID social experiment was wrong, admit the damage it did, at least recognize the damage it did and the damage that it's still doing, and that the damage that the COVID illness does is not more important to avoid than the damage resulting from your coviphobic laws and extreme sense of morality and your beliefs. So people are really suffering, including myself. My business has been nearly destroyed. It has been a disaster. And I have a wife and kids, and I've been working on this for years. And I see the damage around me. I see people suffering. I see people, we don't even talk about the loss of motivation, that just the joy of working hard and seeing the fruit of your labor, that's being robbed too, because of fear, because some people, they don't want to go out, and now they've been given an excuse to stay in, and hey, we'll even send you a check, every month, just get on an unemployment. And people are getting deeper and deeper into fear and depression. And, what we really need to do is to just all agree to go back to normal, back to the old normal, to go back to the old way of doing things. Because the destruction done by COVID is not more important or worse than the destruction done by coviphobia. So what will happen if we go back to the old normal? Yes, others may get sick with COVID and other things. Yes, people do need to be respectful. And if they're sick, they should contain their illness as best as they can. And yes, if someone truly believes that masks work, great, wear a mask. But this foolishness of the coviphobic forcing their beliefs down everyone's throats has to stop. So I want to urge, if you're coviphobic, just recognize that you are fallible. You can make a mistake, and in fact you have, because the way that humans have lived for thousands of years prior to COVID, that was the norm. And it wasn't just random that that's how we lived. It's a normal way to live, that if you want to do something, you do it. You try your best not to hurt others. And there's just no guarantee in life that you're not gonna, get sick and die, that that an accident will befall you and that something will happen. There just really isn't any guarantee. So yes, we need to watch out for each other and be careful. But these laws that you are imposing on everyone, and your judgment and shaming of people who just want to live their lives, who wish no ill will on others, and ignoring the fact that really the things that you've done, your laws, have not really even helped anything. You need to recognize all this, and you need to apologize, and we will forgive you, and we can just all get back to normal, to the old normal. Thanks for listening. please subscribe and like this video.